hope to have the same pleasure of participating in the further years as well. Today's case or motion is this house believes animal suffering should not be an obstacle for satisfying any social needs. I'm going to give you two arguments which are going to be basically about some rules which were made by nature, and I will speak furthermore about progress of humanity itself. On the other hand, my colleague will concentrate on suffering as one part of this motion, but before that I'm going to tell you something about these social needs. I believe that something like this needs to be defined. Well, first of all, social needs are something which is generally useful for humanity and is useful for society as itself. Therefore, if you have a sociopath who kills animals, of course, it's not okay, and the government disagrees with that kind of approach. I believe that...
But sir...
Sit down and just raise next time, you don't need to call me. We believe that those social needs could be, let's say, studying. You have medicine students who use rats and so on to study. We have some kind of medical tests, and so on. Anyway, now I'm going to proceed with my first argument, which is going to be about basically about nature rules. And about all, we believe that the great problem with animals in today's world is that we're giving them a bit too much attention. Yes, they are important, they are the weaker ones, but still, there is a reason why they are weaker and why we are the strongest and why we're at the top. Nature has defined some rules. There are animals, there are humans, there are rats, there are plants and so on. Those rules were made up by nature, and nature has put human beings in the charge of this world. Therefore, we have our brains which we can use the most progressively and so on. We definitely believe that we need to help the ones in need. We need to help those who are weaker. It's something which we have in ourselves. It's called, let's call it empathy. But we should not put their needs in front of ours. We should not give them that much credit. Yes, they are there, but for example, a lion kills antelope. Why? Because it's in his brain. It's something in nature. It's something what he needs to do. Human beings definitely do not need to slaughter animals, but have that option and can definitely use that option in order to provide themselves a better future, which will lead us to my second argument. But before that point...
So is it a need or a pleasure that I eat meat, for example?
It is definitely a need, because you have... It is definitely a need, because you need to eat meat, but on the other hand, you can survive without eating meat, and it can be, in that way, a pleasure if you eat too much meat. But anyway, I'm going to progress to my... I'm going to head to my next argument. We definitely believe that progress of humanity is the most important thing in this world. We believe that there is something which can be taken away from you. You can lose property, you can lose everything, but knowledge which humanity has, no one can take. Comfort, as the old Greeks used to say. Therefore, we believe that humans should develop knowledge regardless anything. They should develop it in the best possible ways. And there are certain knowledges in this world which can be so easily developed. And in that case, there are certain tests which need to be done on a living being. So basically, yes, you can say that we have a choice between a bad thing and the other bad thing. But in this case, animals are killing animals and making them, unfortunately, making them suffer is a less bad thing. It's not as bad as it would be to have an issue with humans, with killing humans. So in this situation, for instance, you have to do some medical tests. You have to find a new cure, or you need to find, let's say, HIV cure or something like that, AIDS cure. Later have to do some medical tests in order to progress, in order to provide ourselves a better life. So if we give a medicine to, for example, a rat, yes, it might suffer, although we don't know will he suffer while he's dying, and he might die. But on the other hand, we can provide ourselves a better future, because let's face the truth. It might sound bad, but in this world we are more important than a single rat. It has its role in this world, it has its purpose, but still human beings are the most important thing. And putting animals' needs in front, letting them to put us in charge, definitely sends, let's call it, a bad example. And here, to sum up, we believe that animals are important, that if it's avoidable, we shouldn't make them suffer. We should punish anyone who kills animals without any kind of need. But if humanity can progress, if humanity can progress, if world can become a better place, I don't see a reason why animals shouldn't die. Not all animals, but definitely some of them. Good luck. Thank you.
We thank you for this speech, and now we go on leader of the opposition to deliver her speech in 10 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will first start by rebuttaling the points presented by the first speaker on the side of proposition, and then give our interpretation of this motion, and afterwards our arguments. I think the first thing that leader of the government said was animals should be used for studying. Yes, we completely agree. When you use animals for studying, you can just learn a lot more without making humans suffer. But the problem here that they are not seeing is that animals are not suffering. Animals are being anesthetized. Therefore, their pain is like non-existing. The main point was nature rules that presented by the Prime Minister, were the nature rules and how people have brains, and therefore because of that they're dominant to the other species. So what we are trying to tell you here is that yes, people have brains. And what is a brain? Brain is the main part of the nervous system. And what's the nervous system? That is the system that helps you feel pain. And we are here trying to fight pain, and we are trying to fight suffering. We are not fighting exactly dying of animals, because the motion says this House believes that animals suffering should not be an obstacle for satisfying any human needs. So, and the example presented by the Prime Minister was testing HIV on animals, animal research for the HIV. I'm just going to remind you, or to tell you if you didn't know, that HIV is human-infected virus, and therefore doing any kind of test on animals will not help you, because animals cannot be infected by that virus. And yes, the third point that they made was that the world is becoming a better place if we just proceed with testing on animals. Well, nowadays we're just developing based on technology and technological research, which has little to do with animal suffering and with animals as such. Therefore, that point is really loose. So how we saw this motion? We saw it by the two main words. First, suffering, and second, any. First, suffering, that excludes hunting or keeping animals in captivity for the sake of food production without animals being harassed or molested, because if animals are kept in humane conditions, they will not be suffering. They will just be executed, they will not be, and they will be used for food. And yes, the point that you addressed is that the point that Moimid raised was, is it a need or a wish to eat meat? Well, it is a need, because you cannot find the proper substitutes for proteins nor for fats that you find in animals. Suffering point, we would like to reduce suffering of animals by changing the conditions they are currently kept at. We have conditions where chicken and cows and sheep are kept in such tiny spaces where they can't even move, and because they can't move, the only thing they can do is they just eat and get bigger. And we to get fatter so humans can use them, but we believe that that is the problem, that animals are suffering throughout their lives. If we improve the conditions for animals, that would not be considered as suffering, but we still get use from them. And the word any, we find that word really important because when you say to satisfy any human need, well, for some users it is completely justified, like testing medications on animals, because testing medications of animals when they're anesthetized is really helpful for humans. You don't have to sacrifice humans. But on the other hand, testing things such as makeup is completely unjustified, because makeup is not an actual human need, it is a human wish or desire. So, our first three points are animal rights, how animals don't have to suffer. First point, animal rights. Second point, animals don't have to suffer in order to satisfy needs. And third point, we are going to raise awareness of the importance of animal rights. That will be presented by my second speaker. So, animal rights. Why do animals have to suffer in this first place? In the point that was presented by the Prime Minister, the only way that we can get anything good is by killing animals and by making them serve us, by putting ourselves as the superior ones and by just having the whole world under us, and that is how we are not helping the human race, we are destroying the human race. Because we are all living in a food chain, we are all living in a symbiosis. If you start destroying a part of that symbiosis, you are not doing yourself any good. You cannot benefit from that. And if you make animals suffer, if you constantly put them through very horrible conditions, you cannot make a world a better place, as much as you are trying to prove that in your first point. Our second point is that animals don't have to suffer. Technology, medicine is advanced enough. We have enough anesthetics in order to make proper researches on animals. You can make, I don't know, cancer research, because hamsters are known to have, after monkeys, the most similar DNA to humans. But why is that important? Because they're so widely used in the research, but they're really easily anesthetized, so they do not feel pain, they do not have to suffer while we are conducting the research on them. So that is why it is very important, this word suffering. It's not about the animal dying, it's about what animal's life looks like while the animal is alive. So, our third point would be presented by my second speaker. We would just like to make a reference to a study conducted in France in 2009 about the cancer research, where rats were used in the cancer research, but they did not feel pain because they were injected with chemicals, so they do not feel pain. And the research was successful. We proved some points about the genetically modified organisms, never mind. But the point is that animals didn't suffer, yet we benefit from them. From our 3 points that we presented to you, we would like to conclude. With our 3 points, I would like to conclude my speech, and I beg you to close me.
Thank you for this speech, and now we call one member of the
Thank you for the word. As a second speaker of government, I'm going to rebut the opposition, and then I'm to tell about my arguments. I think that opposition take it too serious when she said that when we kill that many animals, we are destroying the human race. By that, I believe we would already be destroyed just by killing, so far, killing the animals. How do we know that animals are suffering? And the word suffering for me is too hard. I don't think it is suffering in that way. Besides that, sometimes meat is a need, and not just a pleasure. And some people have to eat meat. So where we put the boundaries, if some people need to eat meat, some animals need to die, and that is a circle of life. But if that animal can die, why can some other animals die to develop science or some part of education, or at that point pharmacy, or I don't know, part of sport
it's not about dying, it is about suffering. Animals can be killed in a really humane way and we can still use them.
But, okay, thank you for the question. For point, well, how do people know that animals are suffering, and how can you kill someone gently? If we kill animals anyway, how can you kill some animal not to suffer? And in medical investigating or any event, I don't know, research, when you take animals to invest something or for human needs, when they are dying, how to do it gently. You're not cutting them piece to piece. They are dead, and then you're searching or testing or anything else. No, thank you. I want to conclude everything. I want to tell that humans are first, and I believe that animals are here to serve humans and to serve science. That's all.
And we are calling the one member of the petition to close the debate in the first round.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would first like to rebuttal on the points that has been presented by the first government. Firstly, we've heard that humans are in front of the animals. Of course, humans and animals are both living things, are both living beings, but we shall not in any time, in any contest, forget about a right to life. Right, that's the primary right. And as it's primary right for humans, it's also primary rights for animals. And therefore, the other side mentioned how people know that animals suffer. Of course they suffer. Of course if they can be killed in a suffering way, which is presented almost in everyday society, which has been also proven by the government. Of course, because we can feel feel their pain. We can see that suffering and pain can be caused in death. Furthermore, I would like to address the point that opposition side said that in order for the progress of humanity, it's absolutely possible to kill the animals, which the opposition side would absolutely agree in the context that those animals won't suffer. They can be killed just for the humanity, but not in the way they suffer. The science has been improved very much, so there has been improved some methods to kill the animals and they don't suffer. Moreover, we have to fight for their rights. We have to fight for the right for all the animals to live, because it's the basic right for all of them. Moreover, I would like to also mention all the anesthetics that can be used to cause that those animals don't suffer when they are killed furthermore. Moreover, what is also important is that people, they mentioned that people are in front of animals and therefore we can kill them. That's absolutely not true, because as we are people, we have the power, but people cannot use that power in order to cause the pain in any other species, because everything that is a living being, it deserves the life, and this power that is given to humans mustn't be used in order for other living things to suffer. Therefore, I will address 3 points, and those points are respecting animal rights, which has been also, which hasn't been rebutted from the opponent side. And I would like just to mention the several United Nations declarations that absolutely prove all the rights for animals to live and to have the life that is protected, because their life is something that is given to them and has to be kept as the basic right for all animals. Furthermore, I would like to mention also symbiosis between the animals and the humans. This world wouldn't exist between the symbiosis, because we are all connected and we are dependent on animals as animals are dependent on us. And that's the reason why we have to provide them with all the rights that they are absolutely deserve. And the second point is that animals don't have to suffer. Of course, as it has been already proven, animals are species that that do not have to suffer in order to kill them. If we kill them, we can use several methods to protect their life, as life is the emergent property that has to be kept by the animals. And there are several examples where animal lives is saved, where animal lives are saved and they didn't suffer all the time, where the experiments have been done and the experiments gave positive results. Scientists found out something, but they didn't suffer the animals as techniques and technology has been improved. And therefore I would like to address third argument, which is raise people awareness of importance of animal life. We live in the 21st century, but unfortunately still there are lots of people who are not aware of the fact how important animal life is. Therefore we are witnesses of everyday suffering the animals and less endangered animals that are that disappear every new day. World Health Organizations and international organizations are ones that really do everything in their power to provide people with the knowledge and raising their awareness of the fact how animal life is important. Therefore, killing animals and providing suffer to all those animals mustn't be something that will provide people ability to kill them just because they can use them. We have to raise the people awareness, because today, in everyday life, there are ecosystems that are absolutely destroyed, and those ecosystems are the basic of the power of the animals and the connection between animals and humans. Humans used animal lives in order to provide themselves with the food, with the several other needs. But let's see, are those things that we use animals, our needs, or all pleasure? Firstly, they are pleasure. The most of people use animal meat and all the products of animals as a pleasure, but also as a need in several cases. But as we have already proved, we do not need to kill the animals and the animal provide the suffering to the animal in order to use them. Moreover, there are lots of vegetarians every day. That's absolutely show one importance in the people raise awareness about the fact how animals. How it's worked and the people awareness. But if we would consider this policy, there will be less and less people who will respect animal rights, and moreover there will be animals destroyed ecosystems, because lots of people will absolutely use all the animals in all the purposes to destroy every connection that the people have with animals that will absolutely provide and collapse in today's society. That's the reason why the opposition side absolutely disagree with today's motion, and through the arguments respecting animal rights that has been provided by United Nations as the major international origin, and animals do not have to suffer as the science has been improved for them not to be killed in an unhuman way. And the third argument raised people awareness of the importance of animal rights. I beg to oppose the motion that the human believes animal suffering shouldn't be an obstacle for satisfying any society. Thank you.
And now we are opening the debate on the second half of the paper. We go on the leader on the second half.
Thank you, judges. We believe that letting animals suffer for societal needs is a short-term loss that will lead to a greater good, and a cause that will help us to end all suffering, because humans are the only ones with the capacity to do that. Firstly, I will start with some rebuttal. Then I will talk about why animal suffering serves long-term good, and why it's critical to oppose vivisection. Firstly, the side of the opposition has constantly been saying that animals do not need to suffer during experimentation and so on and so on. But the point is they do. If they did not have, we would not be having this debate right now. If we could conduct every experiment that can be conducted on an animal without it having to suffer, then this motion would be this one believes you should be a sadist. We have an example of a neurological experiment that was conducted on the dog, removing the small brain. I do not know the correct medical term in English, but I think we know what it is. It controls motor capabilities of every vertebrate being. That is a situation for which, in example, that dog would have had to suffer. They removed the brain, they woke him up. It did not feel pleasant at all, but it needed to be awake and fully aware for the scientists to know what was happening. And that is something that leads me over to my other point, but firstly, the rebuttal on your talk about ecosystems, and yes?
How exactly did that experiment do something good for the humanity?
Yeah, of course it did. Firstly, a rebuttal on, just wait. Firstly, a rebuttal on ecosystems. That is usually rebuttal just by saying we will not hunt and kill and make suffer animals who are endangered or are horribly important in our ecosystem. It's not really something that's too relevant to this debate. So, why it serves the greater good? If we had not conducted the experiment on that dog and not learned about how our brains work, we would be having hundreds and thousands and millions of neurological patients that we would simply not know what to do with because we have no idea what differentiated parts of their brains do. We would have no way to treat these people. Next, why it is long-term good? No. Well, human beings have the capacity to understand that they are rational beings. We believe that this is very important. We believe that human suffering is much greater than animal suffering. And we believe that this rational component in our minds is a means to which we can use to end all suffering. We are at a point where our civilization is in a very painful state. Africa is a factory of suffering. East Asia is very horrible. People there are in great loads of pain. And by conducting experiments on animals and by slaughtering animals speedily, we can prevent great lines of suffering in Africa. We can feed the people, we can learn how to keep feeding them, and we can find a way to do it without making animals suffer at all. For example, genetical experiments could teach us how to make pure muscle without having a component that we are worried could suffer, and mass-produce meat in a much more economic way. Nextly, who are we as humans if we let animals suffer? It's something that goes through the table on the opposite side. But still, who are we as humans if we let ourselves suffer from empathy towards animals? And this is something that leads me to my second argument of hypocrisy and the philosophical zombie argument. If you hit a dog, will it squeal? Yes, yes it will. But will it feel pain? That's something that we do not have a definite answer to. I as a human being know that I can feel pain and that I can suffer. And I know that humans are capable of that. But where is the line where actual pain and suffering happens in a human being? If we squash a cellular organism with a primitive neural system, we would probably all agree that it does not feel pain. If we step on a starfish, it's very questionable whether it feels pain or not. We believe that the basis that is necessary for actually actively feeling pain is consciousness as we meet in humans. No other animal has this component in their minds, as far as we know, and probably not at all. No, excuse me. This worry of okay, yeah.
But why do, for example, cats run away from you when you hit them one time and the another time they will run away from you? Do they feel the pain?
Yeah. Because it is evolutionary, something that really makes sense. If you hurt an animal, it will react by dispositioning itself from you, because it is a way of survival. But we believe that actually feeling suffering actively is something that only conscious beings, being humans, are capable of doing. Now, letting humans suffer for the sake of beings who we do not know if are capable of suffering and preventing us from reaching any conclusion, this inertia of not wanting to go a step further and let animals suffer as means to ending the suffering of humans and animals altogether is what is really hurting us. This will to stay in our spot and do nothing about the suffering because we are scared to do the quick way of fixing it all. A small period of time in which this suffering will rise before it completely goes down. So I have told you about why it is for the greater good, and I have for the long-term greater good, and I have told you why it is critical and why we have no guarantee that suffering occurs. Now I will go back and thank you for vote for us.
We thank you, and now we call upon the leader of the second position, the institution and on the Rezny committee.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we would like to clarify what are the roles of the teams in this debate. So first of all, we believe it's absolutely important whether the animals do or do not have to suffer, because the burden of proof of the proposition is to prove that we can make them suffer for satisfying any kind of our needs. And what is a need, ladies and gentlemen? As was said by the first opposition, need is something, because we cannot say what is an ultimate need. We cannot bring an ultimate definition, because after all, we do not need to live, because there is no ultimate proof for this. So what need is whatever we believe to be a need. So, and as we heard from the first government, we see that things, for example, like eating meat is something that we consider a need in our society. So we believe that the kinds of cases that there are some kinds of cases that are justified, like animal testing, but on the other hand, we believe that what is the problem is that human needs are infinite, and that is the base of economics, because there is infinite scarcity of the needs that we are trying to reach. So the kind of cases which we believe are controversial, and the kind of cases we believe we are talking about is cutting out rainforest. It's the keeping chicken in the cages which are way too small, just so we could satisfy our believed need of having the meat on our plate. So ladies and gentlemen, this is very important to realize what are we actually talking about in this debate. So first of all, I'm going to talk about why we are just like animals and how is it with animal suffering, and second of all, I'm going to talk about moral. So first of all, how is it with, first of all, I'm going to rebut at some points. First of all, what they said is that we have this, like we can reach the ultimate goal only by using animals. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, this is not true. We can never feed Africa by using animals, and even if we could, this is not the controversial case that we are about to debate in this debate. But any ways like feeding people by plant is just so much easier, and that is how we could feed Africa in the last case. So now we're moving to the point of whether animals feel pain. So first of all, what is important to realize is that yes, we believe that animals do feel pain, because after all, we are animals just like they are, because we are connected by evolution. What you can see is that both animals, all the species on our earth, have the same genetic code. We all have the adenosine, cytosine, and all the other things. So we are all pretty much one. And what happened is that just like by the little division, by the accident of evolution, we suddenly happen to be on the top, which is nothing that, as the first government tried to say, is something that we are destined to have. We believe that this was simple accident, and just like the dinosaurs were on top of the true food chain while Homo erectus was suffering, we happen to be on the top of the true food chain, and we do not believe that this gives us any form of special rights. So now we're moving to the points of distinction. So we believe that yes, animals indeed do feel pain. First of all, because we see that it's natural for us to empathize with the animals, because I cannot believe that any person in this room could just come and torture a dog, believing that the dog doesn't feel any pain. Because if we would just, like, we would feel the suffering in the dog, and that's why we believe that it's there. Second of all, we believe that we have scientific proof for animals feeling pain because we see that, for example, their brain structures are very similar, especially in the chimpanzees and everything else. Their brain structure is almost the same as ours. So if we do feel pain and we realize that we feel pain, well, then we have to accept the notion that the animals feel pain as well. And now we're moving to the point of what is the problem of what is government trying to do, saying that some things feel pain and some things don't. So no, thank you. So if we're still genetically close to chimpanzees and we say we can do whatever with them, then we're getting on a tricky ground, because then what we can say is that we are so like the people with Down syndrome, they have they genetically mutated. They do not have the same genetic code because they have the trisomy of the third chromosome. So we can just like we can say we can do whatever to the chimpanzees, we could say we can do whatever to people with Down syndrome. We can do whatever to the children that are not yet born because they are not exactly the same as us. We can do the same to other races, and that is a ground into which we do not want to get. That's why we believe that it's better to just accept that animals do have some sort of rights. Okay, and now let's take a look on the okay, and what is really important, that even if I could not prove that the animals do suffer, what is important is that we cannot disprove it either. Like I cannot say, does the dog feel pain or it doesn't. And since I cannot disprove it, the moral harm which would arise from me using the animal suffering for a long time is just so great that because of precautionary principle, I'm not going to get to that point. That's why, that is exactly the same argument against abortion. I cannot say it is life or it isn't life. But that's why I'm not going to kill the babies, because it might be life. And if I find out 50 years later that it was indeed life, and dogs are very similar, have the same conscience as we do, then the moral harm would be just too great. And that's why we believe that it's better to avoid it on the first place. So now we're moving to the why are we this? There are two models that we can pretty much accept. So they're saying that we are animals, and that's why we can, just like a lion can eat an antelope, we can just go and eat whatever we want. So first of all, we believe that this is a bad way to approach the problem, because what it would mean is that we are unnatural, because we are not like lion, because we can control everything. So we are above the food chain. So if this was the kind of moral approach, then it would mean that we are diseased, and we would have to accept that humans are indeed something bad because we produce all the greenhouse gases, and we pretty much are destroying this planet on the first place. And that's why we should not accept this moral reasoning, because if we do, then we can only approach a problem from something higher, because obviously the things we do are wrong. Okay, so that's why we believe we do not want to accept this kind of moral reasoning. There is another moral reasoning that we believe we should accept, and that is indeed we are above the food chain. We have the humor, we have the moral reasoning, but then what is very important is that we have the empathy. And what is also important is that with power comes wisdom, and we have the empathy with the animals for a reason. So we believe that the just system that we could create is that if we are born into any kind of state on this earth, if I'm born on the dog, or if I'm born as anything else, I should try to build a system the way so I could be born into any position and then have life as prospectful and as good as possible. And that is what we believe that we should strive for. Also, it's really important that no matter what kind of moral principle we accept in relation to animals, we would have to accept the same kind of moral reasoning in our society. And we believe that the moral reasoning of empathy and the moral reasoning of thinking of ourselves as something higher, which can decide, is the moral reasoning we want to have, because only then we can build a functioning human society towards which we are striving today. And also, I'm done right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, I believe that if we are human, and if all the people in this room are human, we should vote for the opposition, because then we should find empathy for it.
Now it's time for review speakers. We call on guest speaker for the government, someone who did on the side of the government, Simon here.
Okay. What is our basic need? Our basic need is to survive. And that is what we are proposing here. Okay, we have needs, and the most basic need is surviving. And sometimes we need to do something like this to survive. And this is why it should be done, because who are we if we let ourselves suffer? Who are we if we let ourselves die and someone else, and an animal lives? We think that animals have a lack of consciousness, and that is why they don't feel pain the same way we do, and if they feel pain at all. So we don't think that
Point of information.
Okay.
Do people with Down syndrome have consciousness?
Again, please.
Do people with Down syndrome or other mental diseases that are different from us have consciousness?
Well, they are different from us, but we don't need them to survive ourselves. We need animals to survive sometimes. And mostly we need them to test our medications on them, and we need them because they are food for us, and because we think that humanity progress is more important than an animal's life. Okay, and we also think that destroying the planet, as the previous speaker said, I think it is a whole other problem. And we don't think we are destroying a planet this way. So we think that this is a short-term loss, a short-term, I don't know, it is a bad thing that is happening for greater good. And thank you. So we just think that we need to do this because we need to survive. That's it.
Thank you. And now let's take a further position to some of this debate from the side of the opposition and debate as a whole in time of reference.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look at the mindset that the proposition has had today. First, what they've done is told us because humans are superior, the rest of the world works for us. They say that they want a better world, but by world, they only mean better for humans. And now, they haven't even proven that this motion would make the world better for humans, but this mindset that you can just kill the weaker person, kill the weaker position, is not something that the side of opposition thinks is moral or thinks is just. And this is very important because when we're talking about animal suffering, we need to talk about the morals behind it, because what makes humans superior? What makes humans superior to the other animals in the ecosystem? Now, what we say is because we accept the fact that we have this higher abstract thinking, and which hasn't been identified in other animal groups. Now, this higher abstract thinking is morals, and so we need to use our morals if you do want to refer to humans as the superior power, because this is incredibly important to this progress that the proposition so wants. Now that brings me to my first point, which is the importance of progress in society. Now proposition has set up a case to you saying, without animal suffering, we cannot survive. Without animal suffering, we're not given our basic needs. But they defined needs originally as anything useful to society, and as my first speaker told you, needs are infinite. If we use the example of animals being having makeup tested on them, some can identify makeup as a need. They need to feel good about themselves, self-actualization, and makeup is a way that they get that. However, we don't think makeup is a case of survival and not survival. Makeup is not what's going to push humanity forward into a great new world that's perfect. No, makeup is just another thing that humans have created and humans have decided it's something they desire and something that they've wished. So what happens is this isn't actually stopping animal suffering for these societal needs isn't going to halt progress. It's just going to it's going to be the moral decision, and also it's going to be a decision which is important for the rest of the world and the rest of the ecosystem, which I will explain later. But to continue, which I will explain now. So we've had a clash today, which is the rights of animals. Now, the prompt says that animals are only here to utilize them, but what we say is that animals have in general, this right to life, and it's what the first table has talked about. And now, why is this? Because in general, yes, we do use animals to survive. We do eat meat. That is a part. And what we see on the food, in the ecosystem and on the food chain is animals do eat other animals, kill other animals as part of their natural cycle. But what isn't happening is exploitation. And exploitation is one thing that that does destroy the ecosystem, and this is something that we cannot do, because let's face it, we cannot live, or humanity is going to progress so much slower if we have big issues with the environment around us, because the environment is a very important part of human survival. Now, when we talk about morals in this sense, so societal proposition today hasn't even proven to you that there will be any sort of progress with this motion. They haven't given a single example of when doing this animal suffering, humanity is going to progress so much more. And this is very important because with such a extreme motion, they need to prove that there are going to be changes, and we just don't think that these there are going to be changes. And even if there are small changes, what happens is those changes are so small compared to the lack of moral judgment that surrounds it. So the three basic ways that we judge morals are under cons imperative, utilitarianism, and fundamentalism. And what happens is this motion it can be judged as immoral through all of these different ways to look at morals. Because what happens is under cons imperative, something's bad if you can generalize it, and when you generalize it, if it's bad for everyone, then that thing is immoral. Now, if we look at that in terms of this case, if all animals all around the world just wanted to make different animals suffer for the sake of progress of their kind, this isn't something that would work in our world, and this is something that would be detrimental. And because it would mess up the food chain, and it would go to this idea of exploitation that I was talking about earlier. Now, if we look at the good outweighing the bad, as I said, we're not talking about basic needs. We're talking about needs that are, we're talking about these ideas of needs that we have. Now, and then fundamentally, it's also wrong because it takes away the life and it takes away these ideas that we hold as important to us and should therefore extend on other living beings, because as the first speaker pointed out, people were animals originally. And so for all the reasons I've stated today, I beg you to oppose.